Hi, I'm Seth Robinson, and we're wrapping up the year here on TrendWatch, so naturally we're starting to look forward into 2026. And we typically look at some of the large research firms and what types of things they're predicting for IT growth. So the two that we look at a lot are IDC and Gartner. We've been using IDC data for a while now here at CompTIA to supplement the data that we're collecting. And IDC just put out a press release talking about their expectations for IT spending growth in 2026. And somewhat surprisingly, they say that worldwide IT revenue growth and spending is going to grow by the largest amount since 1996. On the one hand, maybe that isn't as much of a surprise because people would say, well, isn't it all about AI? And it mostly is. On the other hand, the biggest growth since 1996 is kind of a big deal. It's been a while. And we've had some years of a little bit flatter growth, a little bit of hesitation coming out of the pandemic and some of the extra spending that companies were doing there. So to see this robust growth is really encouraging. And it is largely driven by AI. That is what IDC says in their press release. But AI is not the only thing that's driving it. So it kind of starts with AI investment. We've all read a lot about how much investment is going into infrastructure around AI, especially among the hyperscalers and those companies that are trying to provide AI services. And so that is obviously a large part of this, but that investment in AI infrastructure by these large companies and by maybe startups in the AI space is driving a couple of different things. For one, it's leading to overall economic stability in the midst of a lot of other factors that are causing some economic instability. And so all that investment in AI is giving businesses a little bit more of a stable foundation to continue spending on AI and continue doing some of their digital transformation activities. I've talked before about how we've seen a little bit of cooling around digital transformation, and I think some of that hesitation is real. Companies want to understand a little bit better what return they're getting on the investment. But all of this AI investment does give them a solid foundation to continue doing digital transformation activities, those activities that they believe will be important. So I think we're seeing some broad-based IT spending beyond just the AI spending that the big companies might be doing. The AI investment also drives investment that helps companies get to AI. So even if companies aren't building out their own LLMs or they're not trying to write their own AI algorithms, if they're using somebody else's technology, they still have to consider the network parts of that. They have to consider the cybersecurity aspects of that. And so there's investment going into other parts of an IT architecture, other data spending and cybersecurity spending that helps support the AI investment and the AI activity that these companies want to make. So AI is kind of having a dual effect, I think, on overall IT spending. Now, where exactly is this spending going to happen? This is where I tend to turn to Gartner because they give a breakdown that we've used for several years that helps us look apples to apples on what was spent last year and what's going to be spent next year. So one thing that Gartner shows is that a lot of data center spending, which was huge in 2025, is going to shrink pretty dramatically. It's still going to be very strong. It's just not going to be as monumental as it was this year. But that's going to be offset by increases in software spending and services spending, which are the two biggest areas. So now that all of this infrastructure has been built out, companies are ready to build on top of it. So that's where there's going to be more software spending, more services spending. And of course, that doesn't ignore whatever spending has to be done in networking or cybersecurity or data management in order to enable these things that companies want to do. The last thing that I'd like to point out, going back to the IDC report, is that they show a chart showing the percent growth in overall GDP and the percent growth in IT spending. And these two things are not very well correlated at all. But what you can see in the chart is that after the pandemic, IT spending has always been above GDP spending. And I think that a lot of times we get questions on whether or not there's going to be a crash in technology spending or a crash in demand for technology skills. It looks like IDC doesn't expect that to be the case, and we don't expect that to be the case either. What we see is that we've entered into a digital economy. Companies have to use technology in order to stay ahead of the curve. They have to use technology in order to be differentiated. And as much as they might use layers of abstraction or try to simplify some of their technology or put in some automation, all of that takes effort and it doesn't come for free. So as they have to do more with technology, they also have to have more technology skills. And that's just going to be the way of things as we continue doing business in this world that we live in. So all of these things are going to continue to be strong parts of the workforce moving forward. Not all of these skills will be growing as dramatically as they have in the past, but we still expect to see some growth there. And in a lot of cases, we at least expect them to be steady. So in order to have this digital business that a lot of companies want to have, in order for them to push into their AI initiatives, they are going to have to continue to invest in the technology and the skills across the board of their IT architecture. So it's good news coming out of IDC, news that we're excited to see and things that we're excited to keep an eye on moving forward into 2026. For more of our own research, please check us out at CompTIA.org, and I will see you in the new year on TrendWatch.